There are a lot of people in this room, and I would start with the porch and the back porch, that would love to talk about Luci Swindoll all day. We've learned a lot from Luci Swindoll, and she has changed us. But we don't have time to tell you everything. We're only going to tell you a few things. From the African bush to the capitals of Europe to the trackless wastes of Antarctica, Luci Swindoll is a woman who gets around.
Some people get their inspiration from God's Word, but I get mine from a can of chili.
As a young woman, Luci made the choice to remain single so she could pursue her passion for adventure as a follower of Christ.
As long as your father is in charge of the boat, you do not have to be afraid of the storms.
Her choice hasn't let her down. Life for Luci is a full-throttle, non-stop adventure. Artist, writer, photographer, world traveler, for 30 years an executive with Mobil Oil Corporation. 15 years as a singer in the Dallas Opera Chorus. Yes, behind those bad biker leathers beats the heart of a Renaissance woman.
This is so cool.
Fearless choices? You bet. Or as her admirers back in her native Texas would say, this woman has more nerve than a bad tooth. Please welcome Luci Swindoll.
Just a moment. Thank you so much. Well, I'll tell you, everybody may love Raymond, but we love Sherry Shepherd. That was fabulous. Loved it, every second of it. Last weekend, I flew to New York City to see the unfurling of Christo's gates. I don't know if you happened to see that on television, but it was a fabulous weekend. On the 12th, those gates opened, and they will close down on the 27th. Christo is a Bulgarian artist escaped from Bulgaria, married to a French woman named Jean-Claude, and together they do incredible projects that you have read about in the newspaper and magazine and seen on television for many, many years. And this particular weekend, he was going to run saffron-colored cloth all the way through 23 miles of Central Park, 7,500 gates. And they had to be dropped, actually from the top, individually, and he hired 367 persons to do that. Mary and I went together just to see that. Now, I'm an art lover from childhood, and every chance I can see anything that Christo does, I find very, very fascinating. But one of the most interesting things about that particular weekend was something that I read in the Smithsonian magazine the month before I went, last month. And it was all about Christo and what he had done and his accomplishments through the years and the things that he had wrapped, like the Reichstag and the Pont Neuf and Snoopy's doghouse. All kinds of fabulous, interesting things. But it said in there, the reason Christo wanted to have this in February was because of the trees. He said the silver limbs of the trees will be standing out in sort of a silhouette against these orange gates that are just flapping in the wind all along the way. Every 10 feet for 23 miles is another orange gate. And as I approached the park, I remember looking at those trees and thinking, how beautiful is this? That in itself is an art object. It's a canvas. That whole Central Park, probably the largest and most valuable piece of real estate in the world. 867 acres of that beautiful, beautiful display of color against those trees. I've always been fascinated by trees. I think they are miraculous things made by the hand of God. And I remember the first tree that I was really in love with. I was 12 years old, and my grandmother had given me my bicycle. I loved that bike. I wanted to ride. I didn't want to learn to ride, I just wanted to ride. I wanted to get on that bike and take off. And every day I would go out as an ambitious, eager 12-year-old, get on the bike, wobble along, fall down, and cry. And I thought, wonder why this bike won't let me ride it. I'm here with an eager heart. I want to ride this bike. And in the front yard was this enormous oak tree, gnarled and knotty and beat up and wonderful. I had a swing in the tree. My brothers and I played in that tree. And it was just sort of a keepsake tree for me. But I would, each time, being unable to ride that bike, get off of it and throw it against that tree. I did this so much that the bike was completely bent and looked like a tricycle. Everything about it was unusable. But here was the thing about the tree. It never changed. It just took that abuse and just stood sturdy, and it was just defiant of my abusing it day after day. And I thought, that is fabulous about that tree. If you've ever been to Africa and been on safari, trees are the most interesting things in that land. There's the acacia tree, the aloe tree, the baobab tree, the candelabra tree, and on and on and on. And if you're on safari, your Swahili guide will say to you in the Land Rover, watch the top of the trees. You never know if you will see a leopard or a leopard. They're in the top of the tree. You will see his leg, his tail, his kill. His kill? Yes. Keep your eyes on the top of the tree. And that's the only time I ever saw a leopard, just way up there in the top of the tree. I remember hot air ballooning over a portion of the Serengeti. And as we lifted off, that wonderful whoosh sound where you go up into the air and you're in this basket and you're excited about the day. And we were just floating over the Masai Mara and on, heading toward Tanzania. And I just could stay up there forever. We had enough champagne and we had enough lunch. And I thought, this is just fabulous. And about that time, I looked down out of the basket, and on the top of a tree, an eagle, an enormous eagle, took off, kind of whoosh, these huge wings. And as it left its nest, remaining in the nest was an enormous eagle's egg. And I just wanted to go, yeah. Trees, wonderful things. I love Christmas trees. This past Christmas, I had a Christmas tree in every single room. That's a lot of work. But it was just so wonderful and enjoyable to have my friends over and celebrate Christmas around all those different kinds of trees. Some I had made, some I had bought, all of which I had decorated. With this love of mine of trees, you can imagine how thrilled I was when I received my annual report from Starbucks Coffee. I'm a shareholder of Starbucks. Several years ago, I bought stock in Starbucks. And I got it for about $19 a share. Now it's worth $57 a share. And I love Starbucks, so I got this annual report, and as I opened it and began to spread out its pages and look through it, the first thing it said was, this year we honor the humble, lowly coffee tree because it is our model for what we do at Starbucks. It draws from its roots. It reaches up. It reaches out. It gives back. I thought, yeah, that's what we want as believers. Draw from our roots. Reach up. Reach out. Give back. Have you ever thought about the many times in God's Word trees are mentioned? I think notably we turn first of all to Psalm 1. I remember learning that as a little girl. Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in that law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. And his leaves shall not wither, and he shall bring forth fruit in its season, and everything he does will prosper. And then this is what I like. But the ungodly are not so. They are like the chaff that the wind bloweth away. Just that little verse. And all this about the godly. We don't stand in the way of scorners. We don't sit with the sinners. We are all belonging to God because we are like trees. And it all comes from our roots in the water of life. Also, there's a wonderful verse in Jeremiah that I have found. It says, blessed is the man who trusts me. There it is on the screen. Who trusts God. And the woman who sticks with God. They're like trees replanted in Eden, putting down roots near the rivers. Never a worry through the hottest of summers. Never dropping a leaf. Serene and calm through droughts. Bearing fresh fruit every season. Have you noticed in Isaiah 61, the 3 verses right at the top, it talks about bringing hope to Zion, bringing those who are in bondage to freedom. And what does it call those who do that? Oaks of righteousness. Trees. Everybody in this room should be a tree. An oak of righteousness. I don't know if you know the writing of Anne Lamott or not, but she is a fabulous Christian author. She came to the Lord literally out of the bottom of a garbage can. Foul-mouthed, bulimic, a drug addict, totally drunk, she found Jesus Christ. She was antithetic to the things of Christ. She grew up in a home that hated Christianity. It hated anything to do with God. Yet broke and broken, she came to him. She told me one time after I became friends with her in 1999, she said, you know, Lucy, it was interesting. Jesus was relentless. He wasn't like the hound of heaven from Francis Thompson's poem. He was more like an alley cat, mewing at the door day after day, waiting for me to give him a bowl of milk. And so when I opened the door and gave him the milk, I thought, what the heck, just come on in. And he did. And he redeemed her right out of that garbage can. And now she's an oak of righteousness. And we've been emailing for any number of years. And about 6 months ago, I got an email from her, and it was just so typically Annie. And she said, you know, Lucy, it's so funny, but she said, I decided I was going to have a dinner party at my house. And she lives up in Marin County. And she said, I invited some of my old friends from when I used to play tennis, and some of the people from the Bay Area whom I knew, most of whom were not Christians. And Lucy, they were like hothouse plants. If you went on them, they'd fall. Fragile, needing attention. They weren't comfortable. And yet, she said, I invited people from my church, and they were so different. Now, when Anne came to know the Lord, it was through a very interesting way. She said, I went to a church across the street from where I lived because I listened to the music. It was a black church, and they just got down, baby. They were just great, and they were loud and fun and enjoyable, but I couldn't resist the music. Pregnant and unmarried, she walked in the back door, sat on the back row, and the minute the preaching started, she got out of there. The next Sunday she'd go back and sit a row closer because she loved the music. And everybody was so sweet to her. It was kind of irresistible. And each Sunday as she went, she'd move closer and closer, more and more pregnant, nearer and nearer the time of her delivery. And when she was on the front row and she found such unconditional, beautiful, loving responses to who she was as a person, she said she simply could not help but be a part of that assembly. When her son Sam was born, the ladies in the congregation fought over who was going to hold him, who was going to rock him, who was going to show them the most love. So here she was giving this party for all these little hothouse plants. And then she said, and then I invited people from my church. And they came in. And she said, Lucy, they were like trees, giving off shade and protection and security and love. And they ate the food. And those hothouse plants, they never ate a thing because they think, oh, what if I gain an ounce? These women just came in, ate it up, loved it, laughed, had the best time. I just stood in their shade. I thought, yeah, an oak of righteousness. That's what Sherry Shepherd is in her line of work, an oak of righteousness. And everybody wants to be in her company because she's got the keys. Her roots aren't going to wither. Her leaves aren't going to fall. She's going to stand secure and firm because her roots go toward the water of life. And that's what each of us could be, right where we are and right how we live. Annie now is an oak of righteousness. She has thousands of people in her following. One of the reasons I chose to interview her as one of the 5 women in my new book, Notes for the Working Woman, because of this sound, strong, redemptive person that she is. And she's in an area where many of us would never be able to reach. Talking with people we might never be able to touch. She reaches up, she reaches down, she reaches out. When we do that, here's what happens. Hebrews 12:2. We keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the source and goal of our faith. For he himself endured the cross and thought nothing of its shame because of the joy he knew would follow his suffering. And he's now seated at the right hand of God's throne. Think constantly of him, enduring all that sinful men could say against him, and you will not lose your purpose or your courage. I know people who fret and struggle and let their problems rule them, and if they just reached down, got near the source of water, drew from it, reached up to the Lord Jesus and reached out to other people, things might be very, very different for them. You know, I was born in Texas. I'm Texan by birth. And in 1974, I moved to California and lived there 30 years. I love both states, really. And in California, I owned a condo where I lived for 10 years. Lived very near Marilyn Meberg and other friends who are here in the auditorium today. And yet, for some reason, last year, I began to have this sort of pricking in my spirit, like the Lord wanting me to move back to Texas. I spent so many months in Texas because you can't get anywhere without going through Dallas. Can't get to heaven without going through Dallas. So I thought, I just move there, I'll be on my way. And so I decided to build a house in Dallas, actually in Frisco. I had never built a house. That was really fun. As my friend Mary says, why be happy when you can own a home? Nevertheless, it was great fun. And I built this house, And at the age of 71, I took out a 30-year loan. Why not? I mean, where are y'all going that I'm not? I figure I'm still alive. The blood is running through my veins. There's a pulse. Take out the loan. And it's a wonderful adventure. Absolutely fantastic. And I built this home that I could afford, that brings me tremendous pleasure. And I built it all around a 420 square foot library. And it's just so great. As my friends say, when you learn to read, you'll enjoy your library. But it's a delight to have that home. Well, when I got it all ready in my mind and they began to lay the foundation, I thought, I'm going to dedicate this house to God. So while the cement was still wet, several of us went out one cold evening, and I took a screwdriver, and I thought, I'm just going to write in the cement here, this house is dedicated to God. It was rain sprinkling down, sort of a fine mist. And I went out there, and I knelt down in the mud, and I scratched into the still wet cement, this, T-H-I, this house is dedicated to God, 04-07-04, L. Swindoll. Now, I'm just getting started on the TH, and it's beginning to rain harder. And Mary has the gall to say to me, why don't you just put thanks? It's raining out here. You've already got the TH. I said, no, baby, I got to put the whole thing. So I put it down there. They built the house on top of it. Now, one of the garage walls covers that little saying. But you know, I know it's there. I gave that house to God. And you don't know this about me, and you probably won't believe it, but I'm very much of a loner. I know you don't believe. Ask my friends. I can be very content all by myself for days and weeks. Just send out for pizza, and I'm there. And I decided one time to count how many projects I had that I could do indoors, because I love that kind of thing. Got my own little studio, art studio, got my own kitchen. And I figured out that I could spend in my house without ever leaving home 7 years. I've got that many projects without ever seeing a person. But here's what God did. He said, look, you're a tree. You got to be reaching out. I said, okay. Because this house is mine. Oh, yeah. And so I want you to invite people over. So I've had dinner parties and tours. And in my library alone, I've had 5 photo shoots. People just come in, can I take a picture of the library? Sure, take it. Why not? Because God is in charge of this old oak. He says, you know, I'm going to help you, Lucy. I'm going to make a sapling out of you. You're going to be reaching out and down and up and over and to the highways and byways. And I began to unpack all of the things that belong to my grandparents and my parents and my siblings. And I've got them all over the house now. And it's just so fun to show them off. And I think, maybe I'm not such a misanthrope. Maybe I'll just get out there and actually be with people and love it more. You don't know that about me. But that is very true. In fact, it's even true about Chuck. Chuck is rather shy. But you don't know that when he's speaking on the radio. And yet God takes us out of ourselves, out of our safety zones. He puts a new song in our mouths, and he helps us in those areas where he wants us to blossom and reach out and reach forth. I have a friend who lives in Northern California, and when he was building a home, early in the 70s, he invited me to come and watch the building and visit with him, and so I did that. While I was on his property, he said, hey, Luce, would you like to plant an apple tree? I said, yeah, I would. This was in 1979. I planted the apple tree. 20 years later, he sent me 18 apples from that tree with this note: I want you to enjoy the fruit of your labor. Happy Thanksgiving. And I made an apple pie, and I invited everybody I know. I wasn't very good with the crust, but I'm working on it. As long as you are near the water of life, the water which gives eternal blessing, the water which gives you constancy and life, and limb and growth, you will grow. You will be reaching up and out and giving back. I don't want you to lose hope. You may feel like your days are numbered or your days are over. Listen, if a 71-year-old can take out a 30-year loan, God can do anything. I just want to close with this verse because I think it is absolutely amazing. Job 14, 7 through 9, it says, "For a tree, there's always hope. Chop it down, it still has a chance. Its roots can put out fresh sprouts. Even if its roots are old, or gnarled, its stump long dormant. At the first whiff of water, it comes to life and buds and grows like a sapling." I'm a 72-year-old sapling. And at your age, you're a sapling. You just drink from the water. So if you feel worn out, beat up, abused, gnarled, done in, give that life to Christ and do it through the water of life, and He will make you grow and reach out. Bless you, everyone.